Hope this is working. I'm making these videos short because I want these videos to be relatively consumable. And I know I hit up on this topic once before, kind of as a sideways type thing, but I never necessarily hit the topic directly and dead on. And so I'm going to hit the topic dead on right now, and I'm going to keep it basically straightforward. As I made the point before, with the release of the Office of Director of National Intelligence report, you can see some of my other reporting on that. We are in a new world. This is not a FOIA request came out talking about this, and a FOIA request came talking about that. Those things are radically important in regards to setting context for our world as we move forward. But at the point where those things would come out from the UFO community, they would just be kind of ignored. Mainstream media wouldn't pay any attention to it. The items of the day will take hold and people would just go about their way. And the community itself will pay attention to it. They would think about it. They would talk about it. They would say, hey, this report came out. This guy came out. That guy is a hack. This other guy is a spook. This is, etc., etc. But they were separate. The tracks, for whatever particular reason, didn't meet. It was kind of like porn in the movie profession. It's like that person is a porn star. But the fact that you had to add porn in front of it cuts across that the star is somehow different than the other stars. This is a different world. That report, whatever you want to think of the UFO stuff, has just said this is real and this is a national security issue. To make the point more acute, I read, I was on one of the panels as this came up, and I left in order to kind of just read, to get a feel for what was in it. Right here, I want to point out a few things. ODNI prepared this report for the Congressional Intelligence and Armed Services Committees. The UAP Task Force and ODNI National Intelligence Manager for Aviation drafted this report with input from the USDI, DIA, FBI, NRO, NGA, NSIA, Air Force, Army, Navy, ONI, DARPA, FAA, NOAA, NGA, ODNI/NIM, Emerging Disruptive Technology, ODNI National Counterintelligence Security Center, and ODNI National Intelligence Council. The intelligence branches of your government step forward, arm to arm, and say, here's the information in this report. We stand by it. As the report goes on, I read the first part and I was like, oh my God, something in this report has to undermine what I just read, but nothing did. The limited amount of high-quality reporting on unidentified aerial phenomena hampers our ability to draw firm conclusions about the nature or intent of UAP. The Unidentified Aerial Phenomenal Task Force considered a range of information on UAP described in the U.S. military and intelligence community reporting, but because the reporting lacked sufficient specificity, ultimately recognized that a unique, tailored reporting process was required to provide sufficient data for the analysis of the UAP event. Something is taking place. We accept that it's taking place. It's a real thing, meaning right off the bat, UFOs are now real things as per the intelligence services of all of those alphabet soup of agencies saying, yes, this was real. On top of that, we can't ascertain the intent because we don't have enough information to determine what that is. Now, you can't ascertain the intent of swamp gas, nor can you do that of interdimensional fish. You do try to ascertain the intent of technology that is doing things in your national security space that you don't know what it is, especially from the standpoint of, look, think about what we're saying for the moment. Something is occurring in national security spaces, okay. And it's occurring in a way where the pilots and the people who are looking at it can't figure out what it wants. All right. Now, if it's a fighter craft, what does a fighter craft want? What does a drone want? Those things are pretty straightforward in regards to, okay, this is some technology from some foreign actor, and that foreign actor is doing something like trying to get information or trying to surveil or et cetera, etc. This is such that the individuals that are engaging it be it with the technology, meaning we're getting it on multiple radar in addition to pilots viewing, etc., video and whatnot, that it is so different than what they typically encounter that they can't figure out what it is. And because they can't figure out what it is, they can't ascertain what it wants. That's phenomenal. That's in writing. Office Director of National Intelligence writing this. The classified version, but this is the version that they give it to the public. Saying that. Let's keep going. I mean, right off the bat, that's like, whoa. Okay. All right. Something in this report has to throw cold water on what I just read, and nothing does. Keep going. Most of the UAP reported probably do represent physical objects, given that a majority of the UAP were registered across multiple sensors to include radar, infrared, electro-optical, weapon seekers, and visual observations. All right. It's not interdimensional fish. Real-world phenomena. The report acknowledges it. From henceforth, everything that takes place is no longer conceptual. This is no longer a conversation of whether it's real or not. This is a conversation of, is it us, meaning of this planet, or not? Is it a foreign adversary that has developed technology that is so radical and that leapfrogs us in such a way where we look at it and say, we have no idea the intent of that device? Is that the world we're in? Let's keep going. Where is it? Right here. UAP clearly, like unquestioningly, pose a safety of flight issue and may pose a challenge to U.S. national security. Safety concerns primarily center on aviation contending with increasing cluttered air domain. UAP would also represent a national security challenge if they are foreign adversary collection platforms or provide evidence of potential adversary has developed either a breakthrough or disruptive technology. So wait, when Mick West is showing the light on the screen, we're saying that all of these people and this data, they can't tell what that light is? No, this report is basically saying, look, we don't have enough information. One, these things are real. Two, some of the stuff and the way that it is described and the way that we're picking up the data, if it's a foreign adversary, it would mean that they've leapfrogged us in our technology, and it would represent a disruptive technology. And yes, clearly, it could pose a threat to U.S. national security. It could clearly pose a threat if it is from a foreign actor from the standpoint of Russia and China. It's the same true if it's not a foreign actor, but it's not of this planet. I guess the point that the thing is making is we don't know one way or the other. And in either case, whether it's us or not, it poses a threat to U.S. national security. That's this document. We need more data. We need more information. Here's the other part. The report takes specific and direct aim at this notion that people have been seeing things but haven't been wanting to report because they don't want to be either laughed at or ridiculed, or for that matter, lose their job. You see something going at a radical speed, something ridiculous, and then it makes a right turn, pew, pew, goes a different way. And you're like, whoa. Now what do? Do you report that? And if you report that, do they say, okay, that guy has something wrong with him? There's something wrong with that guy's head. Nothing does that. That breaks our laws of physics. And because it breaks our laws of physics, something's wrong with the pilot if the pilot comes out and says that. Well, the thing is, part of the reason that so many of the people who were coming out were these men of unimpeachable credibility, Fravor, flying on 9/11, keeping us safe. Those were the people that could come out and say it. And because they were unimpeachable in regards to their credibility, because of the way we, go flag and everything else, they could make that case. They could say it. This is what happened. They could show the data to back it up. This was the Tom DeLonge stuff, where all of this stuff came out at once, and Tom DeLonge was going to be giving these people to stand up. A little bit besides the point in a separate video. The point is the giggle factor and how that was hampering their ability to get information. Because people and the things that they were saying were so big and so outside of the norm, those people just didn't report it. And because those people weren't reporting it, it was data and information that they weren't able to get. Well, you go 50, 60 years doing that. Think of all the data that you've missed out on. Think of all the information that you've lost. You've said that this was fake for all of these years, and now you're finding out, no, this is actually a real thing. And because we've castigated these people for so long, now that we need data, now that we need information, we can't get it. Right here. Challenges to getting information. Sociocultural stigma and sensory limitations remain obstacles to collecting data on UAP. Although some technical challenges, such as how to appropriately filter out radar clutter or ensure safety of flight for military and civilian aircraft, are long-standing in the aviation community, while others are unique to the UAP problem set. Narratives from aviation in the operational community and analysts from the military and IC describe a disparagement associated with observing UAP, reporting it as an attempt to discuss it with colleagues. Although the effects of these stigma have lessened as senior members of the scientific, policy, and military and intelligence communities engage in the topic seriously in public, reputational risk may keep many observers silent, complicating scientific pursuit of the topic. The scientific community has been absent on this issue. They've abdicated their responsibility. They have utterly betrayed not just this country, you can say on some level this planet. Where's Neil deGrasse Tyson? Where's Bill Nye, the science guy? These are supposed to be the people who explain our world to us. 9.8 meters per second squared, falling. A philosopher sits on a moon somewhere, sipping a cappuccino and says, the body that's bigger should fall at a different rate. Now, Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye are supposed to pop out at this moment and say, hey, no, save for air friction and everything else, those bodies will fall together. That philosopher doesn't know what he's talking about. And yet, these are our philosophers now. These are supposed to be our high priests. And yet, they've been utterly absent and utterly failed. What do you want to call it? Cowardice? What do you want to call it? Malpractice? Or malpractice from the standpoint of their industry? Whatever you want to call it. Science as an institution has utterly failed on this issue. And the point that the document is making is it hampers our ability to do real science because scientists are basically acting like religious preachers in this kind of weird dogmatic stance of not actually doing the observation. Science at its core is supposed to be observation, right? Specific intent observation. Look at the world, you make an observation. And the thing is, they're not even supposed to care about your feelings about it. Pluto is not a planet. Go fuck yourself. Hashtag science. But on this very specific issue, that's not where they are. They're in the opposite camp. They're not making the observation. They're not looking at the world around them. They're not actually taking a measurement at all. They're in their feelings about the stuff. We've lied to the public for 50 years. And now this stuff is coming to a head. We're still keeping our head in the sand. The fact of the matter is, despite my feelings of resentment towards science on this very specific issue, I still make the point that you're needed. There needs to be somewhat of a benchmark. There needs to be something that says we need to have an arbiter of truth. Something to be clear-eyed in the prosecution of, let's say, bringing the public to awareness. Bringing the public to awareness. You can't have a document like this and the world goes on as normal, especially not from the standpoint of government. The government commissioned this document. It stuck with the findings, which means we need more information. The Department of Defense, who has a lot of explaining to do, and I will make that video next, comes out and makes an X-Files division. Does so immediately. This is X-Files by all other terminology. If you wanted to know what X-Files would look like in practice, right here. A recent report from the Office of National Intelligence highlights the current challenges associated with assessing UAP phenomena occurring or near Department of Defense training ranges and installations. It is critical that the United States maintain operational security and safety at DoD ranges. To this end, it is equally critical that all U.S. military air crews or government personnel report whenever aircraft or other devices interfere with military training. This includes the observation and reporting of UAPs, meaning cut the giggle factor nonsense. This is real. Report it immediately. The report also confirmed the scope of the UAP activity expands significantly beyond the purview of the Secretary of the Navy, who heads the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, and suggested process improvements to ensure timely collection of consistent data on UAP. Consistent with these recommendations and to improve partnership with the ODNI and other non-DoD organizations, I direct the Office under Secretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security to develop a plan to formalize the mission currently performed by the UAP Task Force. What does that mean? This UAP Task Force, we're going to make this permanent. We're going to formalize this process. How this has been going in this kind of ragtag way, no longer. Based on what this reporting is saying, this is something real, this is something we need to deal with, and this is a threat to national security, and we're going to act as such. The plan should establish procedures to synchronize collection, reporting, and analysis on UAP problem set, and to establish recommendation for securing military tests and training ranges, identify requirements for establishment and operation of the new activity to include the organization alignment, resources and staffing required, as well as necessary authority and timeliness for implementation. Be developed in coordination with the principal staff assistants, the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, secretaries of military departments, and the commanders and commands, and the DNI and other relevant interagency partners. All members of the department would utilize these processes to ensure that the UAP task force or its follow-on activity has reports of UAP observations within 2 weeks of an occurrence. Meaning they are basically formalizing this notion of an X-Files division, basically making permanent the UAP task force, and even going further and saying anything that is encountered needs to be reported within 2 weeks with this interagency collection of information. That is an astonishing document. They are basically creating an X-Files division. Be careful what you wish for. This is being cut in the language of defense pretty heavily. Yes, I am browbeating science on this, but I would really appreciate if they took their heads out of their ass and started doing their own experimentation and petitioning the government for what they know. No, I don't want it to be a snuff job, meaning I don't want the Bill Nye, I don't buy this nonsense of the world. I would need somebody else that's involved in the process that's more honest and more hard-nosed about it. By the same token, I don't necessarily trust entirely this notion of being run out of the military. Like, share, subscribe.